usually like to tuck up the area that we just did all of those foils, at least the hair hanging, and I want to just look at the canvas that's below it. So I'll just tuck that and clip it to another foil. Will you tip your head down for me? And then again, where the hair kind of naturally parts, that goes towards the front. This is more in the back. This will also be the area that she swings forward. Most long-haired people will always swing their hair forward, so they like to see those pops in here. So I'm taking that into consideration. So I'll split this section a little bit more organically. I'm not doing as clean of a section, but I'm just thinking about her lifestyle and like how she wears her hair. She always wears her hair down, usually, unless she has like a little clip or something, but it's mostly always straight. So I'm gonna look at these pieces, and this is like still pretty dark. I'll flip up here. She has a little bit more light, but I'm not gonna think about it too hard. Just gonna go with my gut here. I'm gonna go for bigger pops. I'm going to tease it, which will be really fun taking this out later, just so there's a little cushion. And then also this is the 5 volume, so it's a lot more gentle. I'm not as concerned about overlap because it's gentle, and I will check on this too. So I'm just putting this down here. So this is more of a baby light technique that I do towards the root. It's a little bit more precise. And then this one is more of a teasy pop, and this is just organic placement according to lifestyle, the density of the hair, and the look we're trying to achieve. So this will just give her those fun pops and it not look stripy or anything like that on the bottom. So some people will use balayage technique. I don't freehand paint like that. So this is like my version of it. And I'm pushing all that hair sideways to really, really, really saturate it. This is gonna be sitting on her hair for a while. Because I teased it a little bit, I talked about it earlier, you don't wanna feather the blonde solutions like brushing up, but I do have a little bit more of a cushion now because I teased it. So I would say you can bend it like that rule when you're doing teasy pops. And when I brush this tease down, it's gonna just soften this line. And then when I go back to melt it, it's also gonna be softened even more. And sometimes I have to go in the foil and resaturate it if I wanna see a little bit more lift, and that's okay too. So then I layer this on top. And I keep these flat. I try not to bunch it up in a foil because that can also create inconsistent lift. And then especially with the foils that lay on her body here, these are gonna lift the brightest because of her body heat. And so I'm thinking about that too. Keep the developer low so it doesn't lift too fast. So again, I'm just kind of looking to see where this would fall. Okay, so I wanna stand in front of the section that I am foiling and be parallel to the idea of where the part would be. A little poppier section here versus the fine baby light. I see a very bright piece in here, so I'm gonna just pull that away. If you see a very bright piece, you can kind of pull it away. It's okay if we overlap some of these pieces because they're not quite as bright. I'm just teasing a little bit to get some of those baby hairs out of the way. This is really where you need to trust your product. I know her hair is gonna be still healthy even when doing this because Blonde Solutions technology allows it to be. So again, I'm gonna keep this foil nice and flat. I'm just gonna stack another foil directly on top and not fold it up a bunch, like fold it up halfway because that can create a line, which can create a pocket of dry lightener, or it just might not be as saturated, and that's what you want to avoid. Make sure you're pushing the product in, pushing it sideways. And some people do teasy lights while they're doing baby lights, like in between, but I like it to be more controlled. And I know this is gonna sit on her body heat too, so I prefer to do it this way. That's just me though. And I'm gonna make this corner a little higher to her face. So it's really like less is more. You don't wanna do a ton, but just in the places that it matters. So I'll just repeat this process to the front. I'll still leave her hairline out where that money piece lives. That is the lightest part of her hair currently. And we'll approach that at the bowl, doing some wet freehand painting. See, I don't want to remove all of this depth necessarily, because this is what makes all that bright stuff pop. And typically I'm mixing like 5 bowls of whitener for something like this, so I feel like I've been pretty good only doing 2 so far, but I will already need a 3rd, I can tell. Each foil does take a little bit longer, but like I said earlier, it is about working smarter, not harder. And it's not how many foils you put in, it's knowing where to put them in. Where to put the light pieces, where to keep the depth. So still preserving that pocket, teasing it so it will blend out right there. Really adding a pop at the bottom. You can use a board too. Sometimes having too many tools, I'm really clumsy and I'll drop everything. So I just noticed the less tools, the better for me personally. But I've done it both ways. And by adding pops on the bottom, this will make that transition a lot more seamless too. It will give her a lot more contrast. So the baby lights will allow for a blending. We have the cushion here as well, so 2 times the amount of blending. We still have a color melt to do at the bowl. That's 3rd insurance right there. And then guaranteeing the bottom is gonna be lighter than the top also makes for a beautiful blend. So that's the whole back section. We ended up doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pops in the back. I'm still gonna keep with the 10 volume. I'm gonna take her money piece out because we're gonna paint that later. So we'll leave that out. We can also see how fine these hairs are, so we really wanna protect them. Everything else is now the new section. So I'm just gonna go in and weave. I'm gonna over direct it because the angle is a little bit more on this side. There's some lighter pieces, so I will take those out. And then we're still gonna bring this corner up higher, closer to her face, and just really, really saturate. Still keeping this pocket of depth up here. We're just gonna be finishing adding these pops in the front here. That way it helps create that darker to lighter transition, so she feels the most brightness. Keeping the depth, super, super important. That's why we didn't want to overfoil on top. Keeping anywhere from like 6 to 10 foils per section, depending on how big it is. We ended up using about 6 per section, except on this left side it had about 3, I think. Yeah, 3 because it's a little bit smaller. She has more hair on this side. And then she's gonna end up processing for a while, so that way we get it really, really nice and bright. And we've left out her face frame, so that way we can paint it on at the bowl to protect her ends. That is the lightest part of her hair currently, so we did not want to over process. So yeah, you just basically mirror it and make sure you're following the same pattern and technique, and to not make a section bigger than another, because then you're gonna have an inconsistent lift. If you do a super fine weave all of a sudden down here versus that bigger pop, it's gonna look different. So you're really trying to make sure you're mimicking the same techniques on both sides to create that color melt. And you do it according to the client's density, the size of the section. Don't treat them like a mannequin. So preserve the depth. Pull out a super light piece if you need to. Since it's sitting on for a while, just make sure you don't over process the white pieces. She will probably process for about an hour and a quarter, but I will be checking her as I go to make sure it's lifting properly and we're protecting her hair. It's okay to rinse as you go. I actually don't really up my developer too often, I just create more time for it. So I'm not in a rush for my clients to get out. I'd rather do it right the first time than to fry their hair and then you can't come back from that. So you're still over directing this forward. That way when it swings back, it also will connect to the sections we did back here. I feel like sometimes too when I'm mixing blonde solutions, they're 30 grams of lighteners, almost like twice as much it feels like. So I feel like it kind of goes a long way. I do remix a lot because I saturate a lot, but I feel like the bowl of lightener itself goes a really long way. So sometimes if you're doing just a root touch-up and you're not doing all of this, mix less, like maybe even 25 grams instead of like 30 or 35 or 40, because it may actually end up being too much color. So this will be my last one here. I'm really trying to break up this darker color in between. You can see all the depth that we're leaving in here is going to be our transition area. It's going to be so pretty. So this section's super tiny, and that's okay because she has less hair on this side. So between our money piece here, so we're leaving that part alone for now. You see her darker pieces in here, so that's what we're trying to get. For her foils or her freehand paint that we're gonna do at the bowl on her face framing, I will probably use 10 volume because it's already gonna be wet, so it'll be a little bit more diluted. And that one's also gonna process for a little bit too. Bringing this corner up a little higher, and it drops down lower. Super saturated. We're gonna take a little sneak peek and see how it's looking. She's still cooking, but it's looking really good. So I definitely like to go in and check to see how it's doing.